Imagine yourself under a starry sky, around the warm glow of a sacred fire, where speakers gather to share their wisdom and insights. Creating a sacred space where all are welcome to warm their hands. Here are your hosts, Sarenth Odinson, Snow, Cabra, and Emily Streaking Fate. Discuss spirituality, mythology, animism, and culture around a virtual sacred fire. Won't you join us around Grandfather Fire?
Hail to the gods who safeguard us, who provide us the protection of our body, heart, and mind. Hail to the ancestors who safeguard us, who walk with us through hard times. Hail to the spirits who safeguard us, who live amongst us, who give us their care. Hail to all the holy ones who walk with us, before us, behind us, and beside us, named and unnamed, who offer their protection, their guidance, their wisdom, and their love. Hail to the holy ones who encircle us. Hail to the holy ones who bring us peace. Hail to the holy ones who protect. Hail to you all. Thank you for making us safe. Thank you for helping us to keep our wits about us. Thank you for helping us to be sharp when we need to be sharp. Thank you for cunning and courage. Thank you for caution and measure. Thank you for being the arms into which we can fall. Thank you, healing gods, protecting gods. Thank you, healing ancestors, protecting ancestors. Thank you, healing spirits, protecting spirits. Thank you, ever for your presence, ever for your gifts, ever for your blessings. May we give good in measure. Hail to you all. Welcome, welcome, welcome to another Around the Grandfather Fire. This is episode 150 with my good friends and co-hosts, Snow and Emily Streaking Fate. How are you both doing?
I am good. I am slightly surprised by the fact you added a "the" to around Grandfather Fire.
Oh, yeah, me too.
Yeah, just snuck in the definitive Grandfather Fire that we are around. No, I'm good. Uh, Compared to some other people, I guess I've had a fairly all right week. Not much to complain about. So, how are you two?
I am on the right side of the dirt. I am doing better than I was at the start of the week. That's for damn sure. Um, I have been in the hospital from Monday to Wednesday and been in recovery ever since. So I am trying to take it easy and ease back into a normal diet and normal food and such. So it's been an interesting last week in the less fun aspect of that phrase. Interesting. Um, Caught a stomach flu, which reduced me to really massive dehydration and really kicked my ass otherwise. So we went in Monday after dropping off my son at college and went, okay, this isn't normal. I'm not feeling good. Let's get this checked out. And long story short, the doc was like, well, we can either let you go home or, and this is my advice, we keep you for observation. I'm like, neat. I'm going to take the doc's advice. As much as I don't like being in the hospital, let's just not play with this. So, as far as how I'm doing, uh, I've been better, but boy, howdy, given how I was earlier this week, I've been a lot worse. How about you, Emily?
I have been having a good day today. Um, I was not expecting Saren's 3-day hospital stay at the beginning of the week. I am grateful that I seem to have only gotten lightly touched by the virus. I'm still not 100% sure if I actually got lightly touched or if it's just exhaustion from the first part of the week, and recovering from that. The virus did a number on the rest of the family, but nobody had it to the extent that Sarenth did. So, thankfully, only one person in the hospital, but could do without that for the rest of the year, hopefully. Um, it's warm and sunny, although now it's a little bit rainy, but the last couple days have been a lot warmer. And so getting out to the forest with the dog has been really nice. I'm gonna miss the cold when it goes away for like summer, but I wouldn't be surprised if we have a few more cold snaps before then.
Yeah, it's been warmer and sunnier here until the last couple of days, or it's become very intermittent after a day of big chunks of rain. So, you know, so I always joke that when it's bright and sunny and hot, that we have imported weather and it's abnormal. It's not what these isles are known for or what they're meant to do. It's like when I was in the Pacific Northwest in a heat wave, I was like, this isn't what was advertised. I want my money back.
I feel you. The hotel I stayed at during the heat wave I was present for a couple of years back when I was in Olympia, the hotel didn't have any air conditioning.
Uh,
Hmm.
yeah, yeah, that'll do it.
Yeah, it's not fun being in the middle of 70, 80 degree weather and everything is warm, warm. And then, oh, let's add some humidity on top of it.
Yeah, I mean, when I went over and was in Portland and Seattle, and it was like 40 degrees C, and I was like, this is
Ooh.
more than double what I was promised. I I I dressed for what I thought would be Pacific Northwest weather, and I'm now
Oof,
standing out because I'm the tall 6 foot plus person in full black, full denim in the middle of a heat wave.
that's
It's like,
rough.
well, at least I don't have problems with hydration, so I shouldn't get sunstroke. Because sunstroke isn't fun. I've had
No,
sunstroke.
never had it, but yeah, nothing I want to play with.
No, and I got sunstroke in a heat wave in England where I was just sitting in the back garden trying to be in the shade and decided to sit out there wearing all the layers to stop me from getting sunburn. And it was like 30 something degrees. And then I go back inside and spent the entire evening shivering and was like, I'm cold, I need blankets. And they were like, you're clearly not well. So sunstroke not fun.
Do not recommend.
No, would not recommend. Like 1 out of 5 stars would not recommend. Would not book again. Would ask for refund.
I want to see that conversation with the sun gods about
Mm,
that. Yep.
yeah. Oh well.
So, due to unforeseen circumstances, unfortunately, the Mother's Rishanism folks are going to be rescheduling with us tonight. So, this is going to be just a co-host only episode. And so, one of the things I wanted to pick your brain about, since it is a co-host episode, was since you've been going over quite a number of things, actually,
Mm,
I wanted to start off with the Picatrix, because I don't know much about it. I
I've heard
imagine.
of it.
um, can you give us a brief explanation of what the Picatrix is, what it's used for, what it does?
Well, it is. I mean, it's a book. That's the most definite thing anyone could say. It's a book. It's originally in Arabic and is largely oriented around talismanic magic and astral magic. That's kind of the most concrete thing anyone could say about it.
Which is fair. Uh,
Yeah, I mean, as these things go, because it's, often pointed to as sort of one of the uh potentially one of the oldest, but definitely one of the most kind of classic entries in the kind of idea of the grimoire tradition. Originally being the Khayat al-Hakim in Arabic and then becoming the Picatrix in Latin. And how even the name change happened is debated and argued about. And primarily in the West, we have translations from the Latin rather than translations from the Arabic.
mhm.
So people are still kind of working on that. Because obviously, when you take something from an Arabic tradition and then put it into Latin, essentially you're taking it from a Islamic context and putting it into a Christian context,
Right.
which is going to change a lot of implicit things there. Um, and especially because of the big, uh, the Great Translation movement that meant the Arabic world had a lot of philosophical texts and treatises straight directly from the Greek tradition, which Western Europe didn't have after the Great Schism and whatnot. So we're kind of Latinizing an Arabic text in the 14th, 15th century without having any of the Greek influences in as clear a way as they would have done and trying to shift a lot. So even just that side of it is kind of interesting when you try and work out the evolution of it and the history of it.
I think it's interesting because, especially given the time period that this comes out of, there is this great wellspring of, um, in a couple of specific cities. I think Florence is one of them, where these texts start changing hands, and it's fascinating to me that we have this almost this golden era happening in the Islamic world at the same time as there's this darkening, you could say, in the Western Christian world. And so the Islamic Golden Age is happening at the exact same time. There's this almost this great purge of information. Um, and this, you know, the there's so much that would not have been possible, especially with regards to like the Enlightenment, for instance, had these exchanges of texts and ideas and such not occurred. I mean, it's damn near a straight line to some of these texts when you like get right down to brass tacks. The
Right. I
the
mean, if you look at the fact that Islam arose in the 7th century and what of note philosophically was happening in Europe in the 7th century that's even comparable.
right, right.
You
Shrug.
know, um, and if you kind of think that all the great kind of as you said, the kind of Islamic golden age that people talk about with Al-Ghazali and Al-Farabi and Al-Kubaytis and so on. And a lot of their ideas came into the Western world, and a lot of these things from the Islamic world and the Arabic world and the Persian world came into the West, either through um, the Caliphate invading and ruling Spain for so long in the Iberian Peninsula, and then the border there, or simply through the Crusades. Because if you're going over there and you're ransacking stuff and you just take back whatever you find, a bunch of people sitting in France and Germany and England going, "What's this book with the funny squiggles in it?" And suddenly you've got Islamic texts.
So what's the so you said the main thrust of the Picatrix is astrological and astral magic. Um,
Right.
if you don't mind me asking, are you working through the Picatrix, or is this like something you're just exploring? Or is this kind of like a I'm referencing it as I work through it kind of a thing?
Um, I think, I mean, it's a bit of all of the above, because being so influenced by the Greek tradition, which then very much informs Islamic theology, there's a lot of connections you can draw to different Stoic ideas or Hermetic ideas or Platonic ideas within the Picatrix, which to me makes it feel like there are different parts of it are very applicable to a non-Muslim, someone working outside of a monotheistic Islamic framework. If you take the view of it being monistic, not necessarily monotheistic, and because it's very much talking about this idea of the one, which in Islam is obviously going to be Allah, but a lot of the rhetoric and language used to discuss Allah in Islam at this time and with these kinds of writers and ideas is very much informed by Platonic ideas of the one. And I mean, Platonism,
Interesting.
right? And Platonism obviously arose in a polytheistic context.
Because in context of Platonism, the one is kind of a placeholder, right? It's like this entity non-entity thing. It's I know it's complicated.
Mm-hmm. I mean, Islam, even today, Islam leans very, very heavily into Allah being ineffable.
Hmm.
Like it's basically sin to try and depict Allah because it's essentially a waste of time because you can't draw something that is beyond description, beyond measure, beyond anything quantifiable. And that being in Islam, you can kind of see parallels to ideas of the one in Platonism and sort of things like that. This idea of something being so above and beyond. And
Hmm.
so in a Platonic context and an ancient polytheistic context, whether we're talking ancient Hermeticism or whatever, you would then kind of have the one and then the gods. Whereas in Islam, they're saying the one is God, is Allah. And so then Allah's force is then kind of funneled through planets, and then the spirits of these planets who then act upon the earth. And then down here we have humans and jinn and other beings and things. So there's this kind of funneling idea, which to me is very parallel or comparable to um, ideas of the planetary spheres.
Oh, okay,
So
yeah.
you kind of have the one and then the gods and then so on. Um, so it's kind of interesting in that sense. And then so that also kind of makes it interesting when you look at how the Beatrix became Latinized and Christianized, because then it's kind of well, you have God and then you have the angels and the planets, and
Hmm.
it's still kind of how can we make all these spirits and things work in a monotheistic context and that kind of an idea. But it's very much leaning into ideas of like Stoic sympatheia. So the idea that everything resonates with everything else in the universe, everything connects. So if you're making something out of physical material, that material would correspond with the planet of the particular hour you're creating the talisman and would also correspond with the aims and purposes and functions of the thing that you're endeavoring to do, which is kind of something that we see echoing down through the grimoire tradition, through occultdom, through different magical practices to today, where you see modern day Wiccans going, well, I'll create this because it's this color which connects to this thing that I want to do, and it's this material which connects to this goddess because of a dream that I had, or whatever.
It's Picatrix all the way down.
It's kind of interesting seeing how different occult things and pagan things kind of interweave. It's kind of the idea of the occult being like the other side of religion.
Hmm.
It's a fun time. So I've just kind of been going chapter by chapter through um, a translation from the Arabic Picatrix and the Latin Picatrix. Because Danatrell and I forget the name of the other gentleman, which is going to bug me until I remember it. Is it Paraka? Did a wonderful translation from the Latin Picatrix. And some people did a translation from the Arabic. Um, and I'm just kind of going through chapter by chapter and mulling it over and meditating on it and seeing how it links to other things. And it is a fun time. And so I've been monologuing about that in my channel on our Discord server, which you can join without being a member of our Patreon. And you can find the link to our Discord server at aroundgrandfatherfire.com. So yeah, that's the Picatrix.
Gotcha. Thank you for exploring that. The other thing that I wanted to kind of pick your brain is the thus spoke Zarathustra has been
Mm,
really interesting to read on your channel because that's the other thing that you've been posting a lot about lately. Um, I kind of wanted to get your read on that and Nietzschean philosophy writ large, if that's something you're okay with.
sure. So Nietzsche is complicated.
Yeah, to say the least.
um, because I mean, the guy wrote so much and had such a life that you can kind of quote something to make a point and quote something else to make the exact contradictory point. So people have been debating Nietzsche's work since Nietzsche was alive, and conclusions have still yet to be found. Um, but I have been rereading The Spoke Zarathustra or Also sprach Zarathustra, and I find it very interesting and fairly rewarding. And there are lots of things in Nietzschean philosophy that I like, and there are lots of things about Nietzsche that I don't. Um, but I would also suggest that that be perfectly fine and something people consider sitting with more writers generally. Um, but then that gets into the whole art and artist argument, which the internet has been having for 30 plus years by now.
As long as the
Um,
internet's been around.
well, yeah. Um,
I
but
mean,
I mean, we can definitely say things like Nietzsche was not an anti-Semite from the fact that he fell out with his sister because she married a Nazi.
right,
You know,
right.
people talk about Nietzschean elitism. I think you could also make a strong argument that Nietzsche just wanted everyone to be better and was just frustrated at the people that didn't want to develop themselves.
Which is legit.
Um,
I definitely
yeah.
understand that.
I know I heard people talk about his views on women, but then I've seen other people say, well, a lot of this just looks like he was in a dark place emotionally because of his own personal life and just kind of lashing out, which doesn't make it okay, but it potentially makes it more um, understandable, even if you don't approve of it.
Right,
So, human.
right. Weird.
Friedrich Nietzsche was a human. He did dumb things. It just so happens that that then feeds into the writing and works we have from him. And I guess it also doesn't help that he writes using symbolism and allegory and metaphor to make a lot of points. And so that leaves things open to interpretation. But then that would also kind of lead into the thinking that he would encourage everybody to do more of. But I mean,
Gotcha.
even just the rereading the prologue of uh, I suppose Zarathustra, which again is something else I've been monologuing about in my channel on our Discord server, which you can join without joining our Patreon and find the link at aroundgrandfatherfire.com. Um, Even things like the symbolism of him, Zarathustra, being described as carrying ash up the mountain, sitting up in the mountain for 10 years, and then coming down to bring fire to the valleys. I mean, to me, that's full of symbolism.
Hmm.
You know, he went on a retreat, was transformed, has all this wisdom and knowledge, and now because of wanting to improve mankind and his love of humanity, he's now wanting to bring them fire. That's like very Promethean,
Oh yeah, just a touch bit.
you know. Um, and the kind of person in the woods who's left society and is kind of living out there as a hermit, saying, "Well, aren't you worried that they're going to, burn you and punish you for arson or whatever?" Because it's kind of, wisdom can be a very dangerous and transformative thing. It's interesting. And describing humans as a rope across a chasm. The line is something like, "Man is a rope across an abyss, stretching from animal to the Superman, or the Ubermensch." And it's this idea of, what we have been and what we were and what we come from and what we could be and how we are in the middle. And we
Mm.
are connecting these points. And so if we could develop ourselves, we could progress. And if we fall to base instincts or regress or whatever, we'd go the other way, which isn't necessarily a comment on, Goebbels and Himmler and Hitler's idea of what the superior beings would be, as so much as just we would be smarter and better and do things. But what better is going to be a debate for ever and ever.
I think what really struck I really appreciated, especially the last quote in here, man is a rope fastened between animal and Superman, a rope over an abyss. What is great in man is that he is a bridge and not a goal. What can be loved in man is that he is a going across and a down going. I like that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Because especially taking away the idea that we are goals, taking away that there's like some point to it. It really is a freeing thing.
Right. It's this idea of the journey, not the destination.
Hmm.
Getting up every day to be better than you were the day before, rather than waking up one day and going, "Well, I'm done. We're good.
Right.
Good job, guys. 10 out of 10. I'm done. I give myself 5 stars, and now I will sit doing nothing because I am a finished, perfect being." Like, that doesn't happen. So keep progressing, keep journeying through life and the world. And because in many ways, that flies in the face of this idea of Nietzsche being like the ultimate nihilist.
Right.
Because a nihilist would say, "Well, what's the point? Why bother?" Whereas Nietzsche has Zarathustra here saying, "Well, you are the journey, you are the why. Keep reaching, you know."
Hmm. It's one of those things where his philosophy and his writings are so multifaceted that unless you're actually willing to sit with them, if you want them boiled down, that's where a lot of error occurs. And I think this is true of most philosophy, where if you're not willing to sit with it, that's fine, but just admit that. Like, or at least
Mm.
admit that you're dealing with a boiled down understanding of this philosophy. Because summarizing some of these concepts that he plays with in his work, like you said, actually requires you to understand symbolism and sometimes where he's talking from.
Yeah. I mean, I think from my own understanding and interpretation of Nietzsche and the Nietzschean works that I have thus far encountered, I think it very much flies against the caricature of Nietzsche that people would try and promote. Because I think in a lot of ways he's an anti-nihilist. He might not have been all that thrilled about conventional religion, but I don't think he's necessarily pushing for hardcore atheism.
No, it doesn't strike me that
Um,
way either.
I mean, famously people go, well, Nietzsche said God is dead, and it's this great atheistic thing. And I'm like, is it a great atheistic thing, or is Nietzsche talking about other things? Because in context, Nietzsche's kind of saying, God is dead, now humans are focused on other things. That doesn't mean that the spiritual stuff doesn't matter anymore. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist. He's not writing a big thesis debunking the idea of religion and belief.
Right.
He's just kind of saying society's in a different place. Humans are focused on other things than going to church.
Yeah.
Church isn't the great controller and disseminator of information anymore.
Right. And this also pops up with other points of his philosophy where he talks about slave, master, and priest.
Mm-hmm.
And out of context, it sounds like he's setting up a brand new caste system. But a lot of that, from my limited reading, is him commenting on what he's seeing already. And I think that's a really important point of it too, is you get some philosophers who are disappearing into their own sauce. Uh, I think it's Hegel that I see this with a lot when you see people like struggle to make sense of um, the synthesis and all that. And then you get to Nietzsche, and it's like it's less so he's he's commenting on what he's seeing. He's trying to get you to liberate from these stolid interpretations of what must be. I mean, because for context, I mean, like the prime motivator of when he's writing is either really hardcore Christian writing at the time, or it's hardcore atheism, and these two forces are duking it out philosophically across a lot of time and space. And I think a lot of his is commentary, less so I'm going to take you by the hand and lead you in this brand new philosophical direction. It's like, okay, let's, because one of his, that's kind of the point that you just made with the God is dead thing that people don't seem to get is he's commenting. He's not saying this is what is. He's like, clearly society has moved on. Here's where we're at. What will you do with this now, with this
Mm-hmm.
newfound freedom?
I mean, I think for me, Nietzsche is a prime example of commenting on a thing isn't approval of the thing.
Yes.
He's not saying, here is a great thing that's happening. He's just saying, here is what's happening. Now think about it.
Yeah.
That's what Nietzsche is saying in the vast majority of his work. It's kind of because a big thing people do point out when people actually get into Nietzsche is that he's pointing out how people devolve or not devolve, derive ethics and a sense of morality from um, organized, formalized religion. And so Nietzsche posits, okay, if the church is gone, now what do you do?
Right.
And he's not saying, let's get rid of the church, let's get rid of God. He's saying, hypothetically, Christianity's over, God is dead, there's no church, that's all gone. Now what do you do? Now how do you know what's right and wrong?
Right.
Which is very different. He's not saying burn all the churches, you know. It's yeah.
He could speak directly. That's the thing with Nietzsche is he could speak directly when he wanted to actually make a fucking point.
Why
But
speak directly when you can speak through metaphor and symbolism and, force people to do the thinking that you would wish they would do?
Ah,
But yeah, because famously he fell out with his sister because she married a massive anti-Semite who was like a proto-Nazi and
no,
didn't even
that's
attend their wedding because he disapproved so much. Um, because the last work that was credited to him happened after he was in any mental state to write or publish anything because of how his health went in his latter years.
Hmm.
And so it's largely thought that his sister and her husband edited a lot of that final book.
Gotcha. And they would have
Whereas,
no axe to grind whatsoever.
right, whereas people have found kind of letters and diary entries and things talking about how Nietzsche thought the anti-Semitism that was rising in Europe at the time was dumb. And yet he was the big philosopher held up by the Nazi party. So, you know. So yeah, come to my Discord channel in the AGF server where I'm monologuing about the Picatrix or Nietzsche to offset how much I talk about wrestling everywhere else.
You were talking about Agrippa for a while there too, to be fair.
That's true. Yes, when I was finishing watching Dr. Sledge's Agrippa series on his YouTube channel, which was a good time when he was going through the three books of philosophy. Yeah, that was a good time.
Excellent.
Yeah. What have you guys been up to whilst I've been doing all this? I know you went to Convocation, but then didn't get to talk about it much because we've had guests on. So do the Convocation thing.
Don't mind me just driving Emily under the bus.
You had the first class at Convocation.
Oh, see, I see how it's gonna go. I see how it's gonna go. Um,
Oh, so the bell rang at Convocation and the opening bout was Sarenth.
Actually, no. I was at a 10:30 slot. The first classes after opening were around 8:30. Um,
Mm.
I actually thought the opening ritual for this year was really cool. There's usually some sort of audience involvement component to the rituals that they do for these. One of the neat things that they had the headline presenters do is they had each call a quarter in their own fashion, into their own tradition, and that was really cool to see. What was also really neat was as part of the main ritual after they did opening announcements and thanks for showing up and thank you to the staff and volunteers was they had everybody bring a rock from their home. Um, it didn't matter if it was a pebble from your pond or you know a fist size rock from your garden or something. Everybody brings a rock. Yeah, no, nobody brought a boulder. Although don't think it didn't cross my mind. Um, and then you put all
Someone
of
just showing an action figure of Dwayne Johnson.
There's a couple of people that I probably would reliably point to as being that kind of smartass. Hi, Fig. Um, the uh, the opening ritual was really neat though because we gathered all these stones and because they're closing out the Kabbalah as the theme this year because they're descending from Keter to Malkut. So this year was Malkut and that kingdom, that earth, the surroundings was a really big part of the theme for this year. And so everybody's bringing a rock and putting it in the cauldron. And then at the end ritual, at the end of the convocation, the tie-in is you often will bring something or something goes in at the start of the community ritual, and then you take something out at the end of it. Sometimes it's a vice versa thing where you everybody takes like a tag or something, and that stays with them through the whole weekend, and they kind of take that home, whatever lessons they bring. But this year was everybody brings a rock, everybody takes a rock, which I thought was pretty cool and pretty appropriate. Um, I know Benabel Wen was talking on her blog about um, the rock she picked up came from a very special area to her, and I can't, of course, remember what the area is offhandedly. But one of the the rocks that I brought was from our home here, and it was really interesting taking one of the rocks for the closing ritual because it's just like this collective energy of the con, of course, is coming with you, and the energy and spirit of whatever particular stone you happen to pluck out of it. Um, but as far as my convocation experience, my first class, of course, was talking with trolls, which was a lot of fun. Um, the there's always this really interesting dichotomy between what we can find in the sources and what, practically speaking, we can do. Especially when it comes to stuff like trolls, there's so I so the Talking with Trolls workshop, when I was first putting it together, it was so very frustrating because I searched as much as I possibly could for something, anything that talked about trolls. I had at the end of the day, I had about 10 references in the lore that talks about trolls. And then you have to like look at it with a critical eye. Are they talking about Jotnar? Are they talking about like a Giger? Are they talking about a Giger is a kind of troll like person or monster? Are they attributing troll like qualities to Sami people? Or what's the context? And so like in a lot of, I'd say about a quarter to half of the context, it's somebody that's outside the community or somebody that's other, and they're not necessarily, they're talking about troll-like qualities, and so they're not necessarily a supernatural creature themselves. They're like somebody that has a touch of the uncanny, of magic, that kind of thing. And so, what is a troll is a really interesting question with that because it's like they're not Jotnar necessarily. They're not Thurs. They're not. They're kind of their own thing as far as like mythologically speaking, what we can find. And then when you get into folklore and you get into like personal experiences with it, that's where I find a lot of the metal meets the meat. And there's this kind of freeing aspect when you don't have a lot of source material because like you actually have to take the spirits at their word at some point, right? I mean this is true whether or not you could have pages and pages and pages of references. At some point you have to actually trust that what you're experiencing is genuine and true. And so putting that together into a workshop, because they asked me directly to make them a workshop so they could meet more people. And I said, all right, fine. And so one of the things that was really key to that was, okay, here's all the references, but understand, like, after this point, you're off the map. Your experiences are your own. And that is sometimes really terrifying for people, but it's also, I find it really freeing. But I've also done the research and I've also looked through, you know, all these different references to find this information. So like it's when there's not much map and there's just nothing but territory all around you, it kind of forces you to engage in a much more on their level kind of a way, I guess, lacking a better term. It's like one of the things that the trolls have you do in the workshop is uh, the day of that we went to go to con, they had me go fishing in our stream for troll rocks, so people had something to hold on to physically like channel this relationship to have as a reminder and to have as a touch point for the trolls that they could take home with them. Um, and so this kind of immediacy to the relationship is something that I find with spirits especially. Because they sometimes gods can get really abstracted by people. Like if you're not in an imminent relationship with them, like it's like God of, or that kind of thing. Trolls are a very kind of immediate spirit if you catch my meaning. Like they're unmistakably present. It's kind of like a land spirit or kind of like a spirit of fire. Like the fire is either it's burning and present or it's not, right? I find trolls kind of similar in that regard of they're either quite present or they're very much not.
Very tangible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And on a spiritual level, but also I think it's one of the things like I find trolls in a lot of liminal places, like under or across bridges, near bodies of water, that kind of thing. Um, One place where I found which was really neat was I found a troll, um, I guess clan, you might say, under a bridge near a body of water, um, which the bridge is actually for trains. So occasionally you're sitting there, you're talking with the spirits, and you got to pause because trains are going on overhead. But they seem to really like the clamor because, like, after the clamor, there's quiet. But they enjoy that kind of dichotomy. I don't know. There's something about the trolls that just I find they're very raw and very here, lacking better terms. And so there's this kind of wonderful quality when you bring people to them with just these simple stones and you just have them sit with it. Um, and maybe you'll have them do some deep breathing and just experience.
Hmm.
Put as little in front of them as possible, just have them experience and then see what happens. And there's this kind of immediacy that really the trolls bring out with their presence that I enjoy about putting on this workshop. So,
It's like trolls are associated with the places you find things for crafting,
mm-hmm.
where you find minerals, where you find clay, where the earth becomes mud because of its interaction with water. It's
Yep.
all these things that can be shaped and honed and built with.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the cool things about putting this on is occasionally the trolls will point stuff out to you to um give you ideas of how to relate to them. So one of the things that as I was wandering around after opening ritual that I came across in the art room by an artist named Heidi Sutton. She has made these lovely dolls, which we featured on the show before. Um, we have a Desir Saith Kona representation, and Emily's holding the two troll representations we found. One of whom is a pitch black faux fur uh, creature with ram's horns, and the other, which looks like something that crawled out of a bog. Which uh, both of these symbolize different kinds of trolls in the way that I understand them. So, like the bog looking one with her massive strands of hair that cover her whole face, that to me is like is bogs, is swamps, is the the mucky and the swampy and the kind of very watery domain. Whereas I see the black ram's headed trolls as kind of the liminal, the dark, the in between spaces, like under bridges, on top of bridges, the liminal spaces. So even these representations we come across can indicate something of the nature of the trolls we're interacting with. Sometimes, like the stones that a person might pick up can indicate something of the nature of the troll they're talking with. There's this kind of
Oh,
immediacy in the physicality. Sorry,
no, I was going to say, are we going to put photos of those in the show notes for folks?
I think that'd be cool.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So you can check out the page for this episode at aroundgrandfatherfire.com and you will see what Saranth has just described and Emily has just held up. Or if you go to patreon.com/aroundgrandfatherfire and join the kindling tier or above, you can join us live to see when Emily holds such things up.
So that was pretty much my first night was doing the troll work and connecting with folks. Like it's one of the things about Convocation that I love so much is that half the fun of showing up is seeing who else shows up and getting to spend time with them over a 4 day weekend.
Yeah, and I debated about whether or not to go to your troll workshop on Thursday night. So I'm trying to be better about not going to all of your workshops that I've been to before. But also, I love how you bring the spirits into your workshops. And so for me, I really appreciated the quality time with the trolls. Um, even if I got homework, it was really, really fun. Like it was really, really nice.
Do you both get to see many other panels or workshops?
Oh gods. Let me think. I actually need to pull up my convocation schedule because my brain is mush when it comes to remembering. How about you, Emily? What were some highlights for you?
I went to a workshop on the Nephilim, which was really interesting. And I went to a
Hmm.
workshop on Greek. I think it was Greek practice in daily life, but I could be wrong on that. It was Greek really, I think it was Greek practice in daily life. And that was really, really fascinating. And I got books by both of those presenters because I was so impressed with their presentations. I also went to David Shee's workshop on divination, which was really good. Um, what was it? Asian divination systems?
No, it was okay. So it's really funny because I thought for some reason it was on a different day. Prophecies from the Silk Road to Siberia was actually before my workshop.
Mm.
Yeah.
Um, what else did you go to, Seth?
Let's see. We did our workshop Friday, connecting with our ancestors, and I know that
Right.
a lot of folks got a lot of good stuff out of that.
That was very fun. Really glad that that happened Friday. Last year, the workshop we did together was the last slot of the last day, and I was burned to bits by that point. So I really appreciated that this year our workshop slash ritual was on Friday morning, and that was a lot of fun. Thank you for doing it along with me. I know that my way of doing things is very different than your way of doing things, and I appreciate your patience along the way. Um, your patience and support was very much appreciated. That was really fun. It was my second time doing that type of ritual, creating space for people to connect with and spend time with their ancestors. And I think it went really well. People had a lot of different, really interesting experiences.
Nice. That's awesome.
The next, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Snow.
No, I was going to ask if the books that you got there, Emily, that you mentioned, were they on the topics that the presentations were on, or were they just by the presenters?
Um, one of them was on the the Nephilim was on the topic that he presented on.
Hmm.
The Greek, the lady that presented on Greek daily practice presented on other Greek stuff. And so the book that she got or that she had published um was not, I think, specifically daily practice, but let me oh, well it is, yeah, ancient Greek religion for modern pagans. But I had heard about it from my friends who went to her first class. And so this is ancient the waters of I'm not gonna be able to pronounce
Nima
that.
sign.
Mnemosyne, thank you. Ancient Greek Religion for Modern Pagans by Gwendolyn Reese. And the presentation that I went to was fantastic. And I partly went to that because I had friends that went to her first presentation. That was also fantastic. And had heard about the book and got the book. Um, I'll look for the Nephilim book. I thought, oh, here it is. Liber Nephilim, A Grimoire of Fallen Angels by Frater Barabbas. And it was just really, really interesting how he um, connected to the Nephilim and his experiences doing so.
That's
His
really cool.
presentation was awesome. I also
Hmm.
yawned a crap ton during that, so I was like, okay, we will get that book. When I yawn a lot, it often is like spirits are trying to get my attention, or there's just
Taking
like
all of the
excessive,
oxygen out of the room.
or it can be there's just a lot of spirit activity. So like a convocation, I mean, it could be either, but I was like, it's a topic I've been interested in for a bit, so I thought it would be worthwhile to get the book and look at it.
Mhm. And I first heard of Nephilim the same way that I first heard of Chaos Magic and Austin Osman Spare, which was through the band Fields of the Nephilim, because they had whole albums and songs and things based on things Austin Osman Spare had written and rooted on Nephilim lore and all kinds of stuff. So goth rock opens doorways. Everyone should listen to Fields of the Nephilim more.
Neat, thank you. I'm gonna go put that in my queue now.
There you go. Who doesn't love a goth rock band that comes out looking like they're straight from a spaghetti western? It's a good time. Famous stories of being on tour in the 80s and getting pulled over by the police because they think they've got drugs on them when actually it was the fake dust they had to put on their costumes. But no, it sounds
I
like
think
Convocation was a good time. Sorry, what were you going to say, Emily?
I was just gonna say, I for me this year, a Sarenth and I both, I think, managed our energy a lot better than in previous years. The first time I went to convocation with Sarenth was 2 years ago, and it was just constantly like holding him up so that he could make it through the weekend. This weekend was a lot, I think we were both a lot more balanced, and there was a lot of emphasis on our community and local community and our friends, a lot of quality time
Mhm.
with our friends. I'm looking forward to next year maybe being more expanded and more quality time with um, more people in the community that we're just meeting.
Mhm.
Sarah, you were also on the Mirth and Reverence panel.
Oh, that was fun.
What was that about? Mirth and reverence.
Oh
Sounds
God.
interesting.
So, okay. So the Mirth and Reverence panel discussion was put together by Solanox Silverstar, who is part of the Aquarian Tabernacle Church. I've known Lord Solanox for well over almost 2 decades. Oh, jeez. Uh, actually, it's surprising how many of these people I know here now. It's kind of wild when I think about it. The Mirth and Reverence panel came together because Solanox wanted to explore mirth and reverence from different perspectives, and I certainly was a different one. So as myself, Nathan King, Paul Barbary, Jason Mankey was our moderator, Rhiannon Zell, and Lord Solanox, Mara Evenstar, Figment Poe, and Dusty Dion was supposed to be on, but Dusty didn't make it. Um, Exploring what it means to have mirth and reverence and what modern day practitioners exemplify these virtues, weave them throughout their practices. And so, kind of like the place of joy and solemnity. And it was interesting because I was the only out and out, like polytheist animist, um, heathen specifically. and most of the panel were some kind of Wiccan, with the exception of Nathan King, who, well, no, actually, scratch that. Nathan's BTW. Um, but Paul is, I think I'd consider him more of an occultist slash magician slash mad blacksmith. uh, oh, never mind. He's also Wiccan. Never mind. So I was the only non-Wiccan on that fucking panel. I was just clicking on Paul Barbery's owner of Arts and Crafts. I was just looking at his profile. So no, he's an Alexandrian. Um, so I was literally the only non-Wiccan on this panel, and I had, not to toot my own horn, I had an interesting perspective on it. Partly because heathenry has its own interesting history with mirth and reverence. I think it's really funny how the stereotypical perception of heathens went from heathens are all completely, like, we're all just Viking bros drinking and being rowdy, to we all have a stick up our ass and we have to cite the Havmal at least twice, or the thing isn't correct. I think it's really funny how much that has changed in the last 20 years that I've been a heathen. Uh how we've gone from the rowdy party contingent of paganism to now we're the ones that are supposed to have sticks up our ass, even more so than the Cometics. I think that stereotype is absolutely funny. It's not my experience of most heathens. Like, I think most heathens have, at minimum, a very quiet kind of uh, sense of humor. If not, I've known some heathens to be pretty damn bawdy and funny. But it's one of those things where I got to push back a little bit on that stereotype while also being like, not embracing the bro, let's get rowdy, drunk, stupid kind of stereotype. I had a lot of fun with the panel. I'm actually really impressed that we managed to keep most of our responses under 2 minutes. Um, so to that end, our moderator ran a tight ship because with 9 panelists, it was gonna be tight.
Mhm.
But
I mean, it's always an interesting topic, and there's always, well, I mean, I wasn't there for this discussion, but generally, when the topic of how reverential are we when discussing the divine and deities and spirits and things comes up, there's often a lot of judgment.
yes, and that was something that did get tackled. And one of the points that I made was that there is no dichotomy here. Like, I can joke with my god, and I do frequently do joke with my gods, and I do poke fun at my gods. Um, there's a difference between uh, the word's not coming to me. There's a difference between, like, being in fear of offending your gods
Hmm.
versus being irreverent, right? Like,
Mm,
there's a point where irreverence can be disrespect,
definitely.
and I did touch on that. And one of the points that I kept trying to make was that this is a balancing act. It's not like, there's going to be some gods that we can be more gods, ancestors, and spirits where we can be more jokey and more congenial and less formal in our observance, our worship, our interactions. And then there's going to be some where that is going to not fly. And that's going to depend on the relationship we hold with them and what their expectations are. There's just some spirits that you just don't fucking joke with because they can take you very seriously. Um, like, when it comes to establishing a new relationship with a spirit, I'm not going to approach them in a joking manner because, for one, I don't know if they're going to appreciate the joke. For two, I don't know if they're going to take me serious. Because if I crack off with a, well, fuck you then, they might take deep offense to that and act accordingly. And that would be well within their right to do.
I suppose if you're kind of running with the theological framework of it being like human relationships, you're going to have friends and family who can take more of a ribbing than others, and who can take more sarcasm or more jibes than others and laugh it off and still be fine with you afterwards.
Right.
Whereas others, you even try it, and next thing you're having to apologize and make up for things, and because it's just not how they're wired, and that's just not how those relationships go. And when you're meeting new people, whether it's in the workplace or at a cafe or whatever, sometimes you make a joke to break the ice, and sometimes you make a joke and then instantly have to backpedal and apologize because that's just not how that person works.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, the point that I made during the panel too was like, these are not, when you're talking about a lot of God's ancestors and spirits, like a lot of them are manifestly just not human.
Mm-hmm.
You need to treat them accordingly, because if you're gonna crack a joke, you sometimes you got to explain this is a joke. Like you literally got to put it in front of what your joke is gonna be. Um, because your humor just may not translate. Maybe it's the vibes, maybe your delivery's off, or maybe it's just not fucking funny to them. Like this isn't a thing they joke about. Um, you know, and like you said, like if you're treating this as in a theological sense, like a human relationship, there are just some people that aren't. No matter how much you try to explain this as a joke, they're just not going to appreciate it as a joke.
Mm-hmm.
And on the other side, too much reverence can be like, all right, you can get off the floor now. some some spirits are just not into that. Some spirits, it's if you don't show this level of abasement of care, and sometimes it's not abasement. Like that's the thing I tried to make a point about in the panel was like, if you look at a full genuflection or prostration as an abasement, you're probably not, with some spirits, you're probably not understanding the point. Because with some spirits that I've interacted with, the point of being that low is to show respect, not abase yourself. There's a difference there, right?
I mean, I think a lot of that is essentially the baggage the human is bringing to the situation,
Right. Yeah.
you know, um, especially when it comes to gods. I mean, with spirits, you have a greater variety and you get more gray areas and things there. But I think when you're discussing God specifically and how people address and approach and respond and react and treat
Hmm.
deities, then I think we definitely see a lot of human baggage there where it comes into question how they even understand what a god is, which is then going to impact how they're going to talk to and address and respond to a god. And if they're coming from the perspective or a background that has taught them that to do anything but stand at full height with their chest out and a loud voice is to humiliate oneself or to demean oneself, then that's going to inform a lot. Or if they're coming at it from the perspective of they've been told that the way pagans do things is very different to how Christians and Muslims do things, and our view on gods is radically different, and we don't view them as big or powerful or strong or whatever, then that's also going to inform things. And so I think a lot of that is going to be informed by the backgrounds of the humans coming to the situation. I mean, with spirits and ancestors, you get a lot more gray areas because it's such a big nebulous kind of category.
Hmm. Go ahead, Emily.
Oh, I was just gonna list a few more of the workshops that we went to. I went
Cool.
to the Ritual Leadership Skills by Ivo Dominguez Jr.
Mhm.
and Soul Retrieval in Asia, Death and Buddhism, by Benabel Wen.
Hmm.
And then we were both able to help out a little bit with our friend Erin Hagen's runic dance ritual, where she has come up with belly dance moves for each of the runes and led a symbol and dance ritual for that, which was fantastic.
Yeah.
Huh.
It was really neat. I was, when she first pitched the idea, I'm like, I'm gonna have to see this because, like, my immediate off the cuff reaction was, oh no, it's gonna be like Stathagalder, and it was not. And it was very, very cool how she integrated body movement with like visually representing the runes with the arms. For this particular one, she did Fehu, Algiz, and Gabo, I think.
Othala.
Othala, thank you. And it was really neat. The music was really cool, and I was not able to be there for the previous session because she had two sessions, one of which was like prep for this one, for this ritual. Um, I think we had something else. I think it was our ancestor
I
rituals.
think we had our ancestor ritual at that time.
Yeah.
Um,
But so she had a core of dancers that knew all the moves and kind of modeled for everybody else in the ritual setting. That was really neat. I would love to see more people actually do that because that was really cool, being able to follow other people.
Hmm.
it was a really fun ritual. It was, in addition to the fact that there was the symbol aspect and mead, that was delicious.
Oh,
Um,
so good.
but the dancing really connected people on a different level. And it was really interesting to experience the runes in that way.
Because when you first mentioned it, my first thought was, oh, we've gone from runic yoga to runic belly dancing.
Hmm.
So the fact that you're saying you also saw it and your first thought was, oh no, and you left going, huh, that was pretty cool, then that's good.
Yeah, no, I mean, like because I met Erin before Convocation, before she did the workshop, and I asked about that, and she was like, no, 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 no. Like this is about like literally physically embodying the rune through the rhythm, through dance. And I was like, okay. And
Hmm.
so being able to actually like see it and not just talk about it and experience it with my own body was really neat.
Did you
And
also belly dance
I
then?
did. I did actually.
Mm. How honest were your hips?
They were terribly honest.
Ah,
They
They
did
because
did they
not
hips
did
don't
not
lie.
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 Yes.
Oh gods.
Runic hips don't lie.
The cool thing is too is she's going to be bringing the runic belly dancing back, and I'm curious to see how she incorporates more of the runes into a workshop because when you work with the runes in that kind of manner, it's like becoming a living bind rune almost because you're bringing it in and then you're moving it on and you're embodying each rune, but through the dance itself is kind of a song between the runes. So yeah, I'm looking forward to more of these. I also did the Divination Invitational, which was really neat because I sat down and sat back up about an hour and a half later.
The Divination Invitational.
Uh-huh. So this is the 12th one that Green Woman has put on, and I've been to every single one of them. And the Divination Invitational was really cool because it's a way for people to get readings. What was it? Last year, Convocation put in a divination den where you can pay people to get readings, and then Divination Invitational has been running right alongside it, no problem. Where you can give a reading, get a reading. I mostly just sit in a corner and give readings for an hour and a half. I
It's like
kind
an
of,
hour and a half block during convocation where you are welcome to come and give readings and you're welcome to come and get readings. You can do either, you can do both. It's a place where people can come and if they're new to divination and want more practice, they can come. If they have tons of experience and just enjoy wanting to give readings or to get readings, they can come. Uh, and since the readings are free, it is like a nice block of time if people want to attend. I
Mhm.
have not in the past, but it always sounds like something really interesting.
How varied were the divinatory methods? Was it mostly tarot?
No, actually, we had a lot of different methods. We had one, um, which was stones, one which was, um, and not Mongolian stones, which was neat because I don't think David actually showed up for the Divination Invitational because he probably I think he was busy with other shit. Um, but there was a self kind of made stone divination set. There was another person who did games, like games of chance as a divination system. And I've gotten a reading from Melody with this system. It's really neat.
Mhm.
Um, like one of them is like a physical version of Breakaway. It's really cool. Um, so anyway, there were a couple
You
of
did
tarot readers.
runes.
I did runes, of course.
Did anybody do bones?
Yes. I didn't get to get read by anybody because I sat down and didn't get up for an hour and a half. Um, but there were bone readers. There was at least two, I think.
Mhm.
Um, so there's actually a pretty wide swath of different divination methods present. And the bone readings, to be specific, they're more of like a curio reading. Um,
Mhm.
not just bones, but also shell fragments, seeds, that kind of thing.
'Cause I feel
Uh,
like that kind of thing is generally like mostly tarot, a couple of runes, and then some people doing pendulums and scrying.
it's definitely diversified since I started going, because when I first started going, it was mostly tarot and I was the one rune
Hmm.
reader.
Hmm.
And then over the years, there's been a couple other rune readers, but a lot more people have been branching out in different areas of divination, and it's been really neat to see.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, sorry, it's just I was just thinking about it because uh, the uh, the trend in the community has been really interesting. Because when I first started, very very few rune readers. There was a small explosion of a couple of rune readers for a couple of years, and then it was myself and one other person for a couple of them. And now it's kind of like the tarot cards have never left. But there was a couple of Lenormand readers this year, which was interesting. Lenormand is an interesting system, but I can't get into it. It for some reason it doesn't. Anytime I've tried to pick it up, it just doesn't vibe with me.
I'm not surprised. I don't see that as a system that would be along your lines of, yeah, I'm not surprised.
I don't know. I tried. I picked them up, and they went hell no. Every time I tried picking them up, I get the same thing with the
Sareth
old.
doesn't click with cards.
That I actually really like my tarot decks.
Mm.
I picked up a new one this year from a friend. My friend Mare gifted me it's called Eldritch Overlord, which is a
Uh-huh.
cyberpunk neon cyberpunk set. Fucking amazing deck. Love reading with it. Uh, and it's a little less knife twisty than the Shadowrun tarot I have. Um, so a bit more gentle and a little more sprightly, bright, much more gentle. Like I do
Yeah.
read cards, but they're not my usual go-to like runes are.
Hmm. Yes, I mean the last I used was my Thoth deck, which I actually did a reading for like half an hour before we started recording. And then the
Nice.
message that I got saying that the guest had cancelled and wanted to reschedule, I was like, oh, that's eerily coincidental with the tarot reading that I just pulled.
Oh, now I'm curious. What'd you pull? What'd you pull?
What I pulled was first lust,
Oh, interesting.
and then the tower, and then art.
Interesting.
So I pulled those and then get the message saying, so the guest has had to cancel and reschedule. I'm like, oh, that tracks, of course. And this is straight after I'd been sitting and looking at the fact that Venus is in retrograde, Mercury is going into retrograde, and we're at the end of the lunar eclipse.
Mhm.
Oh,
So I was like, well, yeah, communication issues, things collapsing. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Okay.
um, the other another workshop that I went to was Land Spirits by David Shee, which was interesting. Um, and I've been talking with David since what was it? Last year now. Um,
And you haven't stopped.
no. Um, the uh the Land Spirits workshop was really neat, and honestly, if you're a animist of any stripe, you're going to find a lot to talk about with this one because he goes into the different kinds of land spirits that are extant within North Asian cultures. He talks about the Loose and the Savdog, which are um, water and mountain spirits, respectively, and talks about uh, the interaction between them and how they're connected, and the reason why we separate them is for our own convenience, less so that there's actual separation. They're sometimes referred to as loose sov dog because they're really one big family of spirits, and it's just a question of where they live. Um, and so it was a really good hour and a half lecture on that. Let me think what else. There was a bunch of stuff that I wanted to go to that I just did not have the spoons to go to, or needed to go eat.
As is always the
Yeah,
case with such things.
my
It's
Like
like
regret
music
this
oh,
year.
sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say it's like a music festival. You can't go see every band. And afterwards, you
The
can't remember everything you saw. So you're going around finding someone who bought a t-shirt with the lineup on it to go, oh, yeah, I saw them and then them and then them. Oh, and then we went over there to see them.
This is why I'm happy they leave the Convocation schedule up every year because I'm just like,
Mhm.
what did I go see? Shit.
Yeah.
We got a printed one this year, so I might do a post that's a little bit longer that actually lists the things that I went to. I do regret this year that I didn't look at the classes really much beforehand and pick them out. Last year, I think I had the schedule all laid out. This year, I was a little nervous about the ritual, the ancestor ritual, so I wanted to get that out of the way. And then I was like, okay, now I can look at the classes. And it's a lot harder to pick and choose when you're in the space. So next year I'm hoping maybe to balance the planning ahead of time a little bit better.
Hmm.
One of the ones that I really wish I'd be able to go was in the middle of the Mirth and Reverence panel, which was Benabel Wen's Shamanism Meets Taoism, the evolution and first principles of magic. Um, I finally like bit the bullet and started watching Benabel Wen's stuff online because I was like, oh no, I don't need another rabbit hole to go down. Oh, I like this rabbit hole though.
Finally,
I know you've been trying
I've
for
been
years.
I've been a Benabel Wen fan for quite a long time, and I have two of her books, Holistic Tarot and um
The Tao of Craft.
The Tao of Craft. Thank you.
Hmm.
So I have been a fan for a very long time. I mostly started following her blog and such because of all of her tarot reviews and Oracle deck reviews. But her astrology stuff is fantastic. All of the stuff that she does is fantastic. And she's just a very down to earth and thoughtful presenter and practitioner. So, of course, it's one of those I've occasionally told Sarenth about her, and nothing really stuck until, oh, she's presenting at Convo. Maybe I should look into it.
As is the way of these things.
Yes.
This is the way.
Again, it's like you should check this band out. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. You should check this band out. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh hey, this band are playing at that festival we're going to. Oh hey, they were really good. Why didn't I know about them sooner? Oh,
I'm that jackass with David Bowie. Like,
well, I mean, you got into David Bowie and then he died, so I'm scared of who you'll get into next.
I mean, you did just turn me on
Mm,
to the uh,
that's true.
the Field of
You
Nephilim, folks. So I'm sorry.
should start worrying about Carl McCoy's lifespan. Uh,
Oh no, Sarn's into another band. Quick.
start writing the memorial post now.
Um, I think the last thing I did at Convocation as far as like workshops went was my Heathen Mouth Magic workshop,
Mm,
which a lot of my workshops are participatory. Um,
mhm.
because I've been through enough workshops where it's like, okay, like we've got the theoretical, now let's apply it. Um, where the workshop presenter kind of just leaves you like hanging at the end going, okay, well, you've got all the theoretical knowledge. Here you go. Scoot.
Mhm.
It's like I like to give people like the kind of workshops I like to do are participatory ones. So like it's real fun getting people to melt their ice enough to want to sing in front of each other. Um, but we managed to get, what was it, 20 something people to do that. I had 40 people sign up, but I was like, that's got to be aspirational. There's no way in God's green earth that people are gonna show up at 11 o'clock when you have uh, a 1 p.m. I think maybe or noon checkout. But we had 20 something people show up to that workshop, so I was pretty surprised by that.
How
Um,
many turn up just because they're wondering what the name means?
I mean that's fair.
When they see it says Heathen Math Magic, they're like, what is that? Is he going to play runic harmonica?
I
Need to
mean,
turn up and see what that means. Is it a sex thing?
heathen mouth magic. What that mouth do?
Hmm.
What were you gonna say, Emily?
I was gonna say you did do some Galdering with the mouth harp
Mm,
and in our room. We were very lucky in that we were able to get our room moved right next to our friend's room. And so the door between the rooms was open a good portion of the time. So there was a lot of late night shenanigans, um, a lot of fun throughout just because of that. But yeah, I don't know if I would call it Galdering specifically, but calling the runes while using the mouth harp, I think is a very intense way of working with them.
hmm Yeah. The the jaw harp specifically working with that through I'd call it Galder because I don't quite know what else to call it. Um, Singing into and through the jaw harp. It's really neat because it kind of reminds me of techno songs where they've got like something on the person's voice. A synthesizer, that's the word.
The vocoder.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. And so it provides this very vocoder kind of vibe to it, and it's got this really neat kind of sound. Maybe someday I could do that for the show.
It's your
Um,
Neo-Norse Daft Punk tribute.
I mean, around the worlds, around the worlds. Um, so with the heathen mouth magic thing, it's not just singing, it's also like getting people to um uh do Galder Leoth, which is like chanting, um Kavethi, which is it's like runic, or not runic necessarily. It's like alliteration. or it's incantations, that kind of thing. I also talk about Gurningar, which is enchanting through song or through repetition of phrases. I talked briefly about Varthloker. Varthloker is like a warding or enticing song for Say the Work, and that is a completely different workshop. And then there's also Frothy, which is like mumble magic. Now, I wasn't having them do that for the workshop, but it's like literally when you say shit under your breath and you're doing so in a magical atmosphere, like watch your ass because you can actually manifest things doing it. Um, so songs, chants, incantations, poems, alliteration, like talking about like historical context for where these terms come out of, and then okay, what's the practical side? Like, what does this actually look like? So the Heathen Mouth Magic Workshop actually takes them through a spiritual hygiene regimen of cleansing, grounding, centering, and shielding with Galder, Leoth, and Kvethi. So they get a feel for what it might look like.
Hmm.
And I do Galder in like roughly three different ways. I've got croaking, intonation, um, and oh my god, my brain is mush.
Well, because you almost do it in three registers.
Yeah, yeah.
Like you
Mhm.
It's
have the low kind of throat singing sound, and
hmm
then yeah.
yeah. And so you could take inspiration from like with the croaking, you can take like different inspiration from different animals. Like you can
Hmm.
sound like a raven or a bear or a wolf or something as your kind of base for how the throat singing aspect sounds of it. And then you've got intoning, and then you can like literally just like uh intoning is to me it sounds very churchy because that's my context for it. But if you've done like ceremonial magic and you're invoking the spheres or the Sephiroth or you're doing the middle pillar ritual, you
Hmm.
know, that's the kind of vibe I go for when I talk about intoning.
Emulate the sound of a singing snail.
I mean, I mean, do what speaks to you.
Like snails. I mean, that's one way to get people to come out of their shell.
Oh, the third way I do is song form. So it's like literally getting a person to sing um like a rune or something. Uh, and
Hmm.
so it can be like a really melodic. So you've got like
Hmm.
croaking intonation in song. Um, and part of the fun of the workshop is like getting people to come out of their shell just enough to want to
Like a
sing around
snail.
other like a snail.
Hmm. Yeah.
Like, like here's a little butter. Make
Hmm.
little escargots at everybody.
Please stop buttering people that turn up to your panels. They're going to ask you to not go back.
I mean, they haven't kicked me out so far. We'll see what happens.
Mm.
If you have a good garlic sauce, though, escargot is good.
Um,
Sure.
right. I had escargot at a wedding once. I was not a fan. Although
I
to be
never
fair,
tried it before I was vegetarian, and I'm now vegan, so sure.
valid.
Yeah, defying all the heathen stereotypes. I'm a vegan that was singing Shakira while we waited to record.
Yeah, I think one of the things that keeps bringing me back to con, beyond the well, I've been to this thing for the last 20 years, is just the atmosphere and feeling of family you get with it. It's wild because there's like 900 to 1,000 people in attendance, but it still somehow retains that feeling of family. Um, and that's been true since I started going, really. Like this feeling of camaraderie, this feeling of family, this feeling of we're in this together has kind of consistently stuck since I started going, and it's been amazing to see it's kept that despite really blowing up these last couple of years. So, like when it comes to convocation, like the part of the reason I talk about it in such glowing, reverent tones is because it consistently shows to be a place of quality that doesn't cater to necessarily one particular part of the community or another. And I really do feel like it's got a place for everybody there, you know. It's just
Around Grandfather Fire is not sponsored by Convocation. Other conventions based around pagandom and witchcraft and the occult are available. Just 2/3 of the hosts of this one go present there and go all out.
That's because it's local to where 2/3 of the hosts live.
Yeah.
it does help.
It helps a lot. We are very lucky that it is local.
hmm So this got mentioned earlier, and I was kind of wanting to pick people's brains about it because this is always a fun topic when it comes around again and again, as it does every, what, quarter of the year. Um, what does Mercury retrograde mean? What are your feelings on it?
Emily?
Yeah, Mercury goes into retrograde, I believe, 3 times this year. And I appreciate it because it's always a time where you do all the R's, the reflect, the reassess, the rerouting or remapping of things. And I appreciate it because it's kind of like a bop on the head of, are you going in the direction that you want to go? Okay, what would you like to do differently? How do you want to alter your plans to get to where you want to go faster, or to go to, if your desired destination has changed, so to speak, or your growth path or whatnot. When you guys were talking about Nietzsche earlier, the idea of the journey being the destination, and like waking up each day and progressing. Mercury in retrograde for me is that time where, am I progressing in the direction that I want to, or have my desires changed? And looking back and seeing how I can modify what I'm doing in ways to grow in the directions that I want to in this moment. It's also a push for me to journal more, to write more solo time, which I always appreciate. So yeah, for me, I like Mercury retrograde because that's how I interpret it and experience it. There are sometimes extra car problems, knock on wood. Sarah tends to experience those more so, but in general, I really enjoy Mercury retrograde, and I work with it from the idea of, this is a time to reflect, plan, reassess, and look at where I want to go. What about you two?
You're
Well, okay. I think for me, planets going retrograde because currently Venus is retrograde and Mercury has just joined it as the lunar eclipse has ended. Planets going retrograde because it's that idea of reversals, so everything's inverted. For me, it's a good time to be mindful of the things connected to those planets. And so, because Mercury is communication, but also travel and connection and transportation and all those kinds of ideas, teaching, learning, because that's the travel of information, the travel of ideas, the travel of things from one person's head or heart to another's. Mercury going retrograde is kind of taking the time to check that we aren't taking these things for granted, to check we're maintaining these things, repairing these things where they are needed, seeing where maybe they're no longer needed, seeing what we could shed, and those kinds of things, which I think are really important. Um, I think the kind of quote unquote pop astrology has kind of turned it into a big evil, spooky phenomenon, but it kind of happens so regularly that if it was the big apocalyptic bad lots of people try and make it out to be, then we'd just constantly be screwed. So I don't know what to tell you there. Um, but yeah, so things like Venus going retrograde. So it's, am I checking in with how I feel about things? Am I checking in with my feelings? Am I checking in with what brings me pleasure? Am I checking in with my creative side, the arts that I enjoy, the entertainment that I enjoy? Am I oversharing, undersharing? How am I connecting with my close ones, my loved ones, my friends, my family? It's kind of a time to revise all these things, repair what needs repairing, shed what needs shedding. And so with Mercury, it's, am I speaking clearly? Am I talking too much? Am I talking too little? How am I connecting with things? How, um, yeah,
So,
Sarenth.
so writ large, we could say that like retrogrades are for introspection and internal work.
Hmm. Maybe inspection
Hmm.
more than introspection. Because I think things being inverted and kind of using that as a time to check how everything's running and to do a yeah, a system check, a maintenance check, doesn't necessarily mean shut the rafters and take stock of the inventory
Mm-hmm.
so much as just check everything's working as it should, and if things aren't, check why, and if we can boost things, if we can lower things. Um, because one thing that often gets overlooked is people point out that if you have a retrograde planet on your birth chart, then the direct retrograde dynamic is entirely flipped for you.
Oh, okay.
So if on your natal chart you have Mercury retrograde, then Mercury retrograde works for you as Mercury direct works for everyone else.
Okay.
So in that case, Mercury retrograde would be more beneficial. Whereas if Mercury was going direct on your natal chart, Mercury going retrograde might bring up more problems
Hmm.
or be a time for more caution. And the same with Venus going retrograde or Mars going retrograde.
Hmm.
I personally wouldn't bother looking at Jupiter, Saturn, or any of the outer planets going retrograde because for me they're so kind of big and distant that the effects of that are kind of nullified.
Okay.
But as far as Mercury, Venus, and Mars go, um, those going retrograde or going direct or the stationing transition is kind of a time for inspecting the things that and then considering and examining and revising the things associated with these planets. Maybe a time for um, reflecting upon the worship of the deities associated with these planets or magical workings connected with the spirits or the diamonds of these planets, for those of us who are that way inclined.
That makes sense. That makes a good deal of sense because
Mhm,
you're right. Like a lot of the stuff that's kind of out there right now about retrogrades is there. Oh no, everything's
mhm,
wrong. And it's nice to hear folks cut through the hysteria
mhm.
because it's like you said, it's like this happens several times a year.
Right.
Why are you
If
waking
if
your shit?
if it was that bad and that evil, then there would be a new war every time Mars goes retrograde, and we'd all be in bunkers. But we're not.
Right.
You know, I mean, yes, okay, wars are happening and there are people in bunkers, but it doesn't align with Mars going retrograde every single time. And Mars going retrograde doesn't mean everyone is going to fall out and have big catastrophic arguments
Right.
and violent conflicts.
Well, this is where the problem with like pop anything,
Hmm.
whether it's pop psychology, pop astrology, this is
Hmm.
this is where we run into a lot of issues because when you try to overgeneralize something that shouldn't be, this is where the problems occur.
Yeah, I mean, this goes back to what we were saying at the start of the episode, where people were trying to distill Nietzsche down into a couple of bullet points.
Hmm.
You know, these things have so much depth and so much context to them that it's kind of difficult to do that. And so, if you're going to try and get a summary, you kind of need to go to someone who can give you that summary. If you're not going to be able to, for whatever reason, um, sit down and then actually dive into these things yourself.
Yeah. I mean, you asked how I relate to these things, and it's mostly, to be perfectly blunt about it, it's mostly through other people because I
Mhm.
usually don't pay that close attention to the astrological occurrences unless somebody is saying, "Hey, by the way, Mercury is going retrograde, Venus is going retrograde." So I wouldn't say that these don't have an effect on me because astrology is astrology; it affects everybody.
Mhm.
It's just nothing. It's just something I don't pay attention to unless it's
Mhm.
brought to my attention. Um, it doesn't play a really big part in how I do my magic or how I construct magical things. Um, unless for some reason I'm like really intently focusing on doing ceremonial magic for this particular operation. Um, and even so, like it's just not my main squeeze. So it's not even uh it's interesting to know. It's interesting to hear other people's reflections on it. It just doesn't have a really big place in my practice. Um, but that's the fun part about something that kind of affects us all is some people are going to pay real fucking close attention to it, and then people like me, I'm like, you know, moon phase and astrological um, occurrences are nice and all if they happen to correspond, but I usually don't pay as close attention to that. And again, it's not because it's not relevant. It
Mhm.
in terms of like it's affecting everybody, but it's not something that occurs to me to look at.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of people who are not necessarily diving into astrology proper generally either just follow the lunar cycle in terms of the moon's phases,
Hmm.
or just follow the sun through the zodiacal signs, or maybe both, and don't necessarily look beyond the sun and the moon. And really, you can do a lot just with either one of those or the pair of them as the two luminaries
Hmm.
without even thinking about what Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, or Saturn are doing. Never mind countless number of asteroids or centaurs or anything else out there.
Right. I think I think for me, like one of the things that I really pay more attention to is like the weather. The
Hmm.
weather, the grand cycle of are we in Vetter or are we in Sumar, winter or summer, respectively. Uh, what's the local landscape doing? And I think that there's a lot that astrology could say about, especially when you drill down to your like your local land and your local uh ha-
Seasons.
yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
I mean, astrologically speaking, I'm sure there's a lot that you can dig into with that because I
Hmm.
mean, there were planting cycles based
Hmm.
on astrological occurrences for a reason.
I mean, the world over, you see people talking about agricultural things aligning with the lunar cycle.
Hmm.
You know, you harvest when the moon is in this phase, you sow when the moon is in this phase. And on a bigger scale, kind of the sun going through the zodiacal signs. If the sun is in this sign, then it's warm and hot and a good time for the plants to grow. And if the sun is in this sign, it's cold and you should have harvested by now, or else you're screwed.
Hmm. It should say something that the farmer's almanac is still
Hmm.
astrologically based and still used as a basic guide by a lot of folks. And it's not that these things aren't useful. It's just doesn't occur to me.
Yeah. Well, it's like the idea of dividing the year into 365 days and then 366 days, and it being the year 2025 is kind of arbitrary, and humans came up with that.
Mhm.
We didn't come up with the moon.
Sure. I
The,
don't
the
know.
moon is there. And how the moon appears and disappears and so on, and how we go around the sun, and the sun looks like it's going around us. That kind of predates us deciding this will be 2025 and this is March, and you know,
Mhm.
so it makes sense that farmers are like, well, let's use all reliable.
Right. That actually kind of brings me to thoughts about like the eclipse season.
Mm,
Because like I said, for myself, like if I happen to notice, there's the other trick of can I see the fucking eclipse? Because
mm,
cloud cover. Like, is it relevant? Can I see it? Like, what moon phase are we in? I don't know. Can I see the fucking moon? Uh, can I see like what phase we're in at any given time? Um,
yeah. What mood phase are we in? Give me a window.
all right, a window in clear sky.
Yeah.
Um, I say that kind of like tongue in cheek and joking, but like genuinely, if I can't see it, it's really hard to like interact with it. Um, the solar eclipse that we had recently was really neat and felt really pretentious, and it was a day of brewing for my son and I, and it was great. Loved it. The eclipse yesterday night. Um, Went out, hailed the moon, said hi. I'm going to go back inside because it's fucking cold out. Thank you for being there. Hi, blood moon. Okay, I'm going in now. How about you folks?
I like to keep track of the moon as it moves through the zodiac, the as it moves through the zodiac, like every couple of days as it changes signs. There is a couple of signs that I pay specific attention to, but I just like to uh, keep an eye on where it is and how that might influence me. I find astrology interesting, and so every so often I'll do another dive into my chart and review things. I pay attention to things that I have noticed affect me or affect my practice. Um, like for me, my natal Mercury is in Gemini. So when Mercury goes into retrograde, the communication aspect is very much highlighted. Um, or my sun sign and my rising sign are the same. So I feel like I kind of get an easy pass on that. Whereas other people, it's maybe a lot more complicated for them to sort through things because my sun and rising are the same. It's just less data, more straightforward in some respects. So I've gotten a lot of value in digging a little more deeply into certain aspects of my chart, going to people that know their stuff and having them dig into a few different aspects. And that has been very interesting and helpful for me. But I think there's lots of other ways you can go about getting helpful information. And like for Sarenth, you said astrology is not one of your like tight squeezes. I would say it doesn't even live on the same block or maybe even in the same state as you. Uh, Perhaps not even on the same planet, which is fine because everybody has the things that they use and the things that they work with and what they notice affects them.
Mhm.
And for you, it's just not noticeable to you or it's not a big deal. There's other things that give you the information that you need. So there's not a need for you to go down the astrology route. For me, I've always found it fascinating. So every so often I will go down that route for a bit, or I'll have parts of my chart done by someone who knows their stuff because I've learned a lot of information and I've had a lot of validation from that. But when it comes down to brass tacks, it's kind of like, does this help me in my practice? Does this help me in self understanding? Am I actually putting this to use is this just navel gazing? Which sometimes it is, and it's okay for a little bit, like, ooh, fun stuff. But there comes a point where it's like, okay, if I'm not actually applying any of this, then let's take a break and do something else. I think astrology can be extremely applicable, but it is not everybody's cup of tea.
Mm. I mean, I think this also goes back to what we were talking about different divinatory methods as well, and kind of like astrology, like it's a language. Like, if you're speaking Spanish, then Spanish is really important. If you don't speak Spanish, you can get by just fine in other parts of the world without ever having to learn Spanish. And if you're going to go learn Spanish, then using it can feel very rewarding. But there are other times where you just want to sit and read about the grammar and get into that, and it becomes very intellectual and theoretical. But then that doesn't necessarily help you when you want to go buy oranges at the market.
Yeah, that's a great metaphor for it. I think it's fascinating to learn about. I also really like numbers and math. And I know Sarenth is not much of a math person, and I don't know if that is a factor in it or not. But I appreciate the language comparison because I think that's very, very accurate. And I've gotten a lot out of using astrology in different ways and to different extents. Ideally, I would like to increase my knowledge of astrology and the amount that I incorporate it into my practice and my life. But we will see.
Well, you can't learn every language.
That is very true.
You know,
It's like you can't learn every divinatory system.
Yeah. You can learn some Japanese and you can learn some Spanish, but you can't also learn Tagalog and Slovenian and Czech and Maori and Dakota and Irish and Hindi and Tamil and Hausa and, you know.
Those are a few too many languages. Put some of those languages back.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing about the study of language or divination methods is like you can do a lifelong deep dive and be perfectly fine using literally just one divination method, especially if that's your squeeze. And astrology, I've tried on and off for years to get into it. It just does not compute, which is hilarious since it's so based on numbers. Um, it, I kind of just nod when people tell me about astrology and go, I take you at your word because I have no idea what the fuck you're talking about. Like, I've got enough of the lingo to where I know if somebody's trying to baffle me with bullshit, but any in-depth conversation, I'm mostly just listening, going, mm-hmm, all right, this is really cool. But as far as like my own study goes, I'm not very in depth with it. Not because it isn't interesting, but because it does not click with me. But for those that it does, I find it really neat to listen to because it's that same resonance I get when I talk about the runes. Because when people are like really into astrology and they really get it and it clicks for them, it's fascinating to listen to somebody talk about it. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, no.
Mhm.
I mean, people talking about their passions can often help be very inspiring or help with feeling very empathetic about it. I mean, I think getting into astrology helped me with an appreciation of maths more and numbers, because for me it became very demonstrative of ideas we see in philosophy and magic and things of everything connecting the balance and symmetry of things. And so when you're measuring angles and seeing the shapes and things in a astrological chart and how we're dissecting a circle in those different ways, for me that became very demonstrative of those points. And so that kind of helped me with having more of an appreciation of maths and numbers and geometry and things, and kind of thinking about the symbolism of squares and the symbolism of triangles, and kind of when you get into modern astrology more, the symbolism of different numbers, and you know what a septile is going to be in a quintile, and you know those kinds of things, which I didn't necessarily have before as someone who, maths was never my favorite subject in school. Um, but I mean, in a blog post that I shared on our Discord server that I saw an acquaintance write, they were kind of talking to Reverend Eric from the Onomancy podcast, who has been on our show before. And he was talking about how a lot of the maths that you find in grimoires and ceremonial magic and astrology and stuff isn't all that complicated, really, when you kind of look at it, because what were the standards of education like for your average person in the 16th century? So it kind of needed to be comprehensible. And where maths is at now is kind of light years ahead of that.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
And so when people see the numbers and number symbolism and shape symbolism and things, it can seem very overwhelming and daunting. But actually, if you kind of sit and look at it, it's more acceptable than first glance might indicate. Not acceptable, accessible. I mean, it's also acceptable. I don't find it offensive at all. Because we've been going for almost 2.5 hours now. Which isn't bad for an impromptu co-host show after surprise rescheduling.
No,
But
not at
it will
all.
be wonderful once we sort that out. And yeah.
Actually, this kind of dovetails with our last point if you wanted to hit that really quick. Um, because there was a point we wanted to talk about with rituals regarding health.
Mm.
So when it comes to astrology and rituals regarding health, if you were to craft an astrologically minded ritual, what would that look like? What would be the signs most relevant to health?
Oof.
Is this perhaps another show?
I mean, potentially. Um, I mean, a lot of that would depend on what the health issue was,
Hmm.
because I mean, different signs connect with different elements. Different signs are ruled by different planets. Different planets connect to rule over different functions and domains. If you were having issues because you'd fractured a bone, that's an entirely different set of things to if you're dealing with depression is an entirely different set of things to if you're having breathing problems is a different set of things to kidney issues.
And that's
Gotcha.
not even touching on is it just like a New Year's health ritual to do before
Mm-hmm.
whenever your New Year starts for protection and energy and health?
Mm-hmm. Right. A
Ooh.
regular may we all be healthy and happy and safe kind of ritual is very different to a I'm having this problem and need it fixing, please ritual is different to a thank you to the doctors and nurses that looked after me, may their hands always be skilled ritual.
Mhm.
Yeah, that tracks. That makes a lot of sense. Um, so you're telling me there's no one absolute astrological formula for this. Ah, damn.
I remember watching a free seminar someone did ages ago on medical astrology, and they were talking about things like people saying, well, you never want to do it when Mars is exalted. And they're like, well, depending on where Mars is, that could be really helpful if they're undergoing surgery,
Mm,
Mhm.
because that's the cutting blade.
got you.
And like,
Okay.
well, you don't want to do it for Saturn. Well, if they have a high fever, Saturn could cool that. And
Good.
Saturn is also old enough to have the wisdom of all the doctors of the past. So, depending on how Saturn is posited on a chart, that could also be highly beneficial.
So what I'm
Like,
hearing is like don't rely on the pop astrology
mhm.
to for diagnostic criteria of an astrological ritual or acute rituals especially.
I mean, there are professional medical astrologers out there who solely focus on medical astrology, and it is a field unto itself
Oh wow.
that I've barely skirted and gone, wow, that's impressive and a lot.
I think my exposure to medical and astrological things is mostly through the Chinese medicine side of things
Hmm.
and how that whole rigmarole interacts between and within itself.
Hmm.
And I'm not even scratching a surface. I'm barely putting the pad of my finger on the skin.
Hmm.
Like that shit's real deep.
It's a completely holistic, intertwined system with lots of components and elements.
Hmm.
I mean, I think the most surface level thing you could say with Western astrology is that if you had a figure standing,
Hmm.
then you could pretty much map the zodiacal signs from Aries to Pisces from head to toe. And so
Gotcha.
go those signs with those body parts. So like Aries the head and Pisces the feet and like Capricorn ends up around the knees and that kind of thing. So then those would be signs you'd want to look to for issues with various regions of the body.
Gotcha.
That's like the most basic thing you could sort of start off with.
And then it just gets more complicated from there.
Oh yeah.
So, is there like this phenomenon, like you see sometimes with other magical systems, where it's like, oh, say we've got a foot issue, so these are Pisces. So you've got like inflammation of the feet. Would this be like a Mars in Pisces kind of a thing, or is this like a misreading of how to read this kind of stuff? Like if I've got if the feet are Pisces
Hmm.
and I've got a concern about inflammation,
Hmm.
would this possibly be a Mars issue, and therefore I should take a Mars or a Piscean route? Is that is what I'm saying making any kind of
Yeah,
sense?
yeah, yeah.
Because
So it could be, yeah, it could be, Martian heat is there and creating the problem there.
right,
So we need to find something that's going to negate and counter that. Yeah.
because like from a TCM perspective, like the feet might be like Earth or the
Hmm.
and so you would do the things that feed the Earth. So you'd apply water, or you'd if
Right.
that kind of
Because I
thing.
mean, you say the same, you see, I mean, this goes back to kind of ancient Greek theories of medicine and such,
Hmm.
where it's kind of, an overabundance of earth will be countered with air, an overabundance of water will be countered with fire.
Yeah, the humor
It's
system.
the elemental balance of things, and then yeah,
Hmm. Gotcha,
and a
gotcha.
fun time was had by all.
I find it interesting because like especially because we're in this age of modern medicine and we can see all these different moving parts from a metaphysical perspective. And it doesn't negate the medical perspective. It's just like this is additional information for us
Hmm.
to consider.
Learn from Hippocrates, not hypocrites.
Ooh, that's a banger. I like that. Yeah,
On that,
we could probably go ad nauseum on
yeah, I
rituals regarding health. I think that might be a separate episode.
was going to say on that note, are we calling it a show?
Hmm.
It's been quite a long one.
It's been quite a long one. But I
So,
think calling it here and let Jason having a
So Emily, if people, after they've listened to this lengthy AGF episode, want to read what you do and hear about the things that you do, where can they go?
they can come find me on streakingfate.wordpress.com.
Mm.
What about you, Sarah?
you can find me at sarth.wordpress.com. You can find me at patreon.com/Sarth Odinson. You can also find me on Substack, which is substack.com/Sarth Odinson. You can find me pretty much on any social media site as Sarenth or Sarenth Odinson. Snow.
You can find me at snowthegoth.com and all the things will be there, or from there, or to there, or just there. You can find the show at aroundgrandfatherfire.com. You can support us on patreon.com/aroundgrandfatherfire for as little as $1 a month or as much as you want, or whatever the tiers allow, and whichever tier you decide you want to support us at. If you support us from the Kindling tier or above, you can join us live for these recordings and join in the Zoom call where all the craziness happens. From aroundgrandfatherfire.com, you'll find links to our other social media presences and to our Discord server, which you don't need to be a Patreon patron to join. We have a lot of fun over there. It is a good time. I monologue a lot as I read Nietzsche and the Picatrix. And yeah,
All right, with all that being said, you can find Around Grandfather Fire at patreon.com/aroundgrandfatherfire. You can find us on Spotify or whatever lovely platform you would like. We are on pretty much all of them at this point. And I want to thank everybody, all of our sponsors, all of our listeners, all of our patrons for joining us. And we will see you next time around the fire.